So I'm just back from Tenerife and I've got some cultural observations for you. The first one is that I saw loads and loads of people with mobility issues. So lots of people riding on mobility scooters, including people that look quite young. There was also, I noticed quite a lot of blokes wearing knee supports and compression socks, just things in huge numbers. It was just things that I'd never seen before. I also saw quite a lot of people with strange blotches on their skin, on their legs, and I even saw a strange pattern on a woman's back, like tracing out blood vessels. It looked really weird. There was also quite a lot of people with amputated limbs as well, whether that was down to diabetes rather than a medical experiment, or maybe a combination of the two. I don't know. Another thing that I thought about was the mobility scooter thing. Is that has it almost become fashionable for some lazy people to hire a mobility scooter? Again, I suspect maybe in some cases. There was also a really strange dichotomy, hence the thumbnail for the video, because we were staying in Los Cristianos and there was at the same time a huge volleyball tournament going on, international one. So there was Germans there, Ukrainians, all extremely fit and healthy. So there was this dichotomy between people with the mobility issues and these people. Second thing to say, second cultural observation, is something that I've realised myself about TripAdvisor. Like, the whole idea of TripAdvisor was that it was the wisdom of the masses, that people would vote, and the most popular restaurants on TripAdvisor would obviously be the best ones. Well, what I've realised is that that's clearly not the case. And that's because it's normies, isn't it? If you go by TripAdvisor, you're going by the wisdom of the normie. And en masse, the majority of these normies went for the medical experiment. So why would you trust their judgment on which restaurant to go to? Third observation was that there were a few people wearing the slave muzzle. Now, that's really, really unusual because I just don't see it where I am in Pori in Finland. But these people, they just look brainwashed Karens, the people that really enjoyed being told what to do and living under biomedical fascism. And you can tell these people, they want to be stared at, and they really miss the biological fascism. I also saw some evidence of people that seem to be having thinking problems, just people that looked and acted as though they were just brain dead, basically. People, one example was like a bunch of elderly people, and they were trying to pay their restaurant bill to some dude who was begging in there. It was just like really weird. I also saw some. I have to say, this was a British person on the beach trying to barter. There was some Bangladeshi dude carrying cold drinks around on the beach. Quite a tough job. And this guy was charging €2 for a tin of beer on a beach that he was like lugging around. And this Brit tried to knock him down to €1.50. It's just like ridiculous behaviour. Like, what are these people thinking about? Again, it was like the actions of a normie. They just think it's fun. They have zero empathy for these people. Fair enough, if you don't want to buy one of his drinks, that's perfectly acceptable. But like, taking the piss out of him, trying to bargain with him and having a laugh about it, that's not cool. The other thing that I thought about was that in some ways, Tenerife more resembled the Britain that I remembered and loved than the actual real Britain does in 2025. And that's because many of the bars and restaurants are owned by Brits. And what they try to do to attract custom is to create an exaggerated, stylized version of Britain that no longer exists. The demographics of Tenerife as well also more closely resemble the Britain that I remember growing up than the actual Britain does in 2025. I think the other thing to say too is that this kind of line about, oh well, Brits they've fallen out of love with the pub and people don't want to go to pubs anymore. It's completely wrong. The problem is that back home in Britain, people can't afford to go to the pub. But what I noticed in Tenerife at, I don't know, €2.50 for a beer was that the bars and terraces were packed full of people talking with each other. So that proves that it's the price that's a problem. It's not really a cultural change at all. It's just the price, the cost of living crisis that's been deliberately created by British politicians. They want the pub dead because that's where people can meet and talk and swap ideas. There were also exaggerated versions of other countries. So there was Italian restaurants, there was bars, Dutch bars, German bars, places selling Indian food. So, in a bizarre way, you can actually have a cultural experience in Tenerife. If you want to find out about, like, for example, I've not really ever been up to Scotland. So you can go to the Scottish bars and talk to Scottish people or talk to Italians. You can practice your Italian. So I quite enjoyed that aspect of the trip. You can visit many, many countries by just going to one country, Spain, and visiting the island of Tenerife. Final thing to say is that on the way back home at the airport, I just noticed how modern and spacious the airport was in Tenerife. Much nicer, more modern than either Heathrow or Manchester. But unlike those British airports, there were these Spanish staff, staffed by locals, but they had bad attitudes. They had that kind of Nazi stare. So I think the thing to do with these people is make a point of saying hello to them and smiling at them. Try to remind them that they're dealing with human beings. The other thing as well is that flying from Finland to Tenerife, you're not leaving the Schengen zone, so there was no passport checks or anything like that. So that's something that's very, very different for people living in the Schengen zone compared to outside. So, even when Britain was a member of the EU, we weren't really benefiting much from the freedom of movement aspect. Anyway. Something that was quite surprising was the number of Hong Kong Chinese people there working in bars, or maybe even owning some of the bars. And you'd say really, all in all, that Tenerife is no longer a Spanish territory. It's globalist. I remember ordering a cafe con leche to somebody. I wasn't sure what the nationality was. Anyway, it turned out that this person was British, and she kind of replied with, "Oh, you want a white coffee then?" and had a good laugh about it. So I can understand why ordinary Spaniards living on Tenerife are kind of probably a bit. They probably view tourism as a mixed blessing. So that's all I want to say today. So God bless.